Hi, everyone. This is Sam Silverman, managing partner of EB5AN. Thank you for taking time to join us on today's webinar. Today, we're going to be speaking with a real EB5 investor, Mr. Lin from China, who recently completed an EB5 investment in our Snake River Sporting Club Rural EB5 project. First, it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Lin and thank him for his time today. He's had an experience going through the EB5 process, evaluating projects, selecting an EB5 attorney, and he's graciously volunteered some of his time today to share his personal experience in both English and in Chinese with potential investors who are considering making an EB5 investment in the future. With that, Mr. Lin, thank you again for joining us. And yeah, maybe to start, could you tell us a little bit about your background, where you're from, and what's your experience been with the United States so far?
Yeah, of course. Hi, I'm Mr. Lin. I am from China. I was a law student in US and now I'm working. Well, so far I've been in the US for like 3, 4 years.
Got it. So you've been in the U.S. for a few years now, pursuing law. What made you decide to pursue a path to permanent residency in the U.S.? After your studies, were completed and you had a chance to be in the workforce for a few years.
Yeah, so two main reasons. One is that, well, I have a job here and I can see a clear career path for me in the United States. So naturally, I want to stay and remain indefinitely. Second is that uh, I see the potential that I can bring my parents on to the U.S. when they retire. Uh, after I, of course, after I obtain permanent residency and I become a citizen, I can apply green cards for them.
Got it. And as you were kind of exploring different options to stay in the U.S., what were some of the other options that you considered, and how did you kind of end up deciding on pursuing EB5 specifically?
Yeah, so I did the traditional F1 student OPT H1B path, but H1B wasn't successful, and I still wanted to stay. So that led me to EB5 program.
Got it. Got it. And I'm I'm sure as an attorney, you've done quite a bit of research on the program, the pros, the cons, you know, understood that finding an experienced to help, assemble your application, make sure that, everything was well documented, was really important for you. So could you share a little bit about what that experience was like, interviewing a few different attorneys, and who did you end up hiring and why, and kind of how was that whole kind of attorney selection and process?
Yeah. So I kind of talked to immigration attorneys from 3, 4 different firms, different teams, um, and ended up with Mr. Yang from Reid and Wise. Um, well, there are several things that I consider. Well, first of all, is whether this attorney has experience in helping EB5 investors. And second, you want an attorney that's capable and independent. So what I did is that I personally reached out to different attorneys, and I did the choosing. So far, the experience with Attorney Young's team and him has been great. They are very responsive. They've been helping out with my source of funds documents and answering my all types of different questions.
Got it. And one of the things that you mentioned there was, the importance of hiring an independent attorney. And I'm sure as an attorney yourself, you have a little bit more understanding of the importance of that. But could you kind of elaborate a little bit more on why finding your own independent attorney was really important to you, and why any investor considering an EB5 investment in any project should really do exactly that, find an independent attorney to help them through the process?
Yeah, of course. I mean, this is a big investment, and you want an attorney that's looking out for your interest and your interest alone. So finding an independent attorney means that there's someone looking out for you. They are not secretly helping out with other parties or thinking about other parties' interest. I think that's a key. That applies to any situation when you are hiring an attorney.
Got it. Got it. And so, having just gone through the attorney selection and source of funds documentation exercise, what are the couple, two or three main pieces of advice that you would give to someone considering EB5 in terms of picking their own attorney?
I would say, of course, shop around. You would need to talk to at least a couple or several attorneys before you make a final decision. You don't want to just talk to one and say, okay, that's it. You want to talk to several, see what they offer, ask them how many cases they have dealt with, what it's their experience. Of course, you can ask for some suggestions from maybe former investors or the regional centers. They may provide you with some suggestions, and you can go from there. And of course, there's nothing that stops you from doing your own research or maybe just a Google search to find out what are the EB5 attorneys out there.
After having done a lot of research on potential regional centers and potential projects, what made you decide to work with EB5AN as the regional center for your investment?
Yeah, so there are several regional centers out there doing EB5 programs, and I think EB5AM is one of the largest one of the ones that has more that has better track history of the former program, has more success. And also, I I contacted several regional centers and their projects. I asked them for their investor memos, and I looked at them. The ones from EB5AM tends to be projects that, well, I personally like most. Hospitalities, property developments. Those are the projects that I think are safer in terms of financial risks. And I also look at the terms in the memo. They seem, well, more reasonable compared to the others that I've looked at.
Maybe spend a minute and touch on why it's so important to really carefully read the investment memo as an investor, and then second, having reviewed a number of these memos from EB5AN and some of the other regional centers, what were some of the key differences that you saw across memos from different projects?
Yeah, the investor memo is the one key document in making an EB5 investment. It's an equivalent of a prospectus if you're buying shares from a company that goes to IPO. So this is the one most important document that contains all of the key information associated with this project. So I'd say um, the structure of the funds, the risk factors, when and how you're going to be repaid from the loan. So these are the key factors in the memo, and you have to read it as an investor, as it provides all the most important information in there. Having read several different memos and talked to people, and I think that the memos and the projects from EB5AN, they tend to have reasonable terms. I've seen some sort of unreasonable terms in other contracts and from other memos, which I'm not going to disclose. But um, from my perspective, and considering all the different factors that I think that um, the investor memos from EB5AN tend to be more balanced, more reasonable, and uh, friendlier to investor.
Got it. So, kind of following up on that same line of reasoning, how did you find, having talked to a few different regional centers and reviewed a few different projects, how did you find kind of differences in terms of access to information? So things like the latest sales information, all the financial statements, the ability to visit the project, current job information and capital spend data. What were some of the differences that you saw in terms of, some of the other projects and memos versus your experience with EB5AN?
Yeah, I'll say EB5AM definitely do a great job in terms of transparency for all these data. You know, how many jobs are created, how many funds have been invested into this project. You can simply find on EB5AM's website. Compared to other regional centers, they will probably provide you with the same information if you ask, but it's not like you can, simply go to EB5AM's website and look at the very up-to-date data there.
Great. So you mentioned earlier that you had kind of a preference for hospitality and real estate development projects. Could you talk a little bit about kind of what were the most important things that you were looking at when you were evaluating potential EB5 projects? Like what was kind of your investment framework, as you considered, different projects, and what kind of led you, to consider some of the ones at EB5AN, including the Snake River project?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, the type of investment is one of the key factors. Hospitality, real estate. The thing about these type of program is that the business model is straightforward. We all know how the hotel is run. We all know how real estate, how houses are sold, how the housing market is. So very straightforward. I don't like to get into industry that I have very little knowledge of, infrastructures, some other industry. I don't know how those work. Another big factor why I chose this specific program or project is Snake River has almost all of the job created before I even invested. Um, to me, that's a big plus. I prioritize um, green cards. So and as an EB5 investor, we all know that the USCIS looked at the job created when they are deciding whether to issue you a green card.
And as an EB5 investor, considering both projects in urban areas and in rural areas, how did the fact that the Snake River project was in a rural area, how did that kind of fit into your decision making, and why is that important, for you as a Chinese national?
Yeah. Um, so according to the latest statistics that's published from USCIS, there is already a huge backlog for, I think, for at least for urban projects. So if you invest in an urban project as a Chinese or Indian investor, you are looking at potentially 5 to 10 years of backlog. Um, so that's a huge factor. And at least for now, rural projects, even though they might be facing some backlog, but not as serious as rural, as urban projects. You might be looking at maybe 3 years of backlog for rural projects, but I think that's manageable.
And can you talk for a second about the faster priority processing for rural projects and the 20% set aside, and kind of how those factored into your decision for seeking out a project like Snake River that's rural?
Yeah, so as we all probably know that there is a 10,000 pack counts every year. And the USCIS set aside 2,000 headcounts for rural projects and 1,000 headcounts for urban projects. So there's that. Apparently, there's a huge difference when you're looking at 2,000 instead of 1,000. Um, and when you're making that decision, and especially if you are a Chinese or Indian investor, that is a huge factor because that would determine how long before you will eventually get your green card.
And just zooming out about the Snake River project, how did you first come across EB5AN, or the Snake River project? Just how did you find us originally?
Yeah, I was doing my Google search. I just put in EB5 investment projects in Google, and one of the regional centers that comes up was EB5AN. Of course, also looked at different other regional centers, um, but yeah, I was looking at several, maybe 5, 6 different projects at the same time. Um, but yeah, Google search it was what originally brought me to EB5AN.
Got it. Got it. Um, and so that's good. You did a search. You spoke with a number of different companies, evaluated a few different projects. Um, you know, let's just say for a moment that you know the Snake River project, was sold out, was no longer available. Um, you know, how big of a difference between the Snake River project versus one of the other projects that you were considering? Like how big of a difference was that? Or I guess said differently, if the Snake River project, was a 10 out of 10 in terms of what you were looking for, rural, under
Mhm.
construction, proven sales, all of that, what would you say was kind of the second best option in comparison that you found?
Uh, I chose the Snake River project because first, as I said, I look at how many jobs I've created. By the time I invested in this, uh, I think almost all of the jobs have been created. So as long as your funds are okay, you're very likely getting a green card. That's a huge factor for me. Another thing is EB5AN provides you with the possibility of a partial investment. You can invest partially and then submit all the filings to USCIS, and you're granted a period of time, and you can get all the funds ready, get the rest of the funds ready, and invest in it. I was looking at another project. I think it's a car parts factory. They also have created all the jobs, but they would not accept partial funding. So that makes a huge difference for me. That's why I eventually chose Snake River.
Got it. So, having now kind of gone through the experience of working closely with the EB5AN team through the onboarding and getting all the documents together for Snake River, yeah, can you share a little bit about your experience working with the EB5AN team, and yeah, how was the experience, and yeah, what was your general thought of that process?
Yeah, the experience is definitely positive. The team are very responsive, especially Patrick. He has been answering my different type of questions very quickly and timely. The rest of the team are also very responsive. I ask for all different type of documents, which the team very timely provide me with. And everyone's polite, friendly. So I would say interacting with the EB5AN team, it's a pleasure.
And so, having now kind of gone through, all the initial stages of the investment process and filing and whatnot, and let's assume, now speaking only to other potential Chinese investors specifically, what kind of two or three main points of advice would you give to, fellow Chinese investors considering making an EB5 investment, in the near future?
Yeah, I would say the near future is one key because we're looking at backlog that's already there. If you're looking at making an investment, you better act fast. Because once the backlog appears on USCIS board, we don't know how long that's going to take. So if you are thinking of making an investment, you must act quick. But again, second, I would say this is no small money to anyone. For anyone who's thinking about making an investment, be very careful, do a lot of research, do your own due diligence, hire a lawyer or hire someone who's experienced in this, provide you with counseling. Third, I would say there are a lot of programs out there on the market. You need to look at several and compare them, do a thorough comparison between these programs and make your own decisions.
And last question, having gone through the experience with the immigration attorney that you picked out and EB5AN, would you recommend your attorney and EB5AN to other potential investors considering doing EB5, and why?
Yeah, absolutely. Attorney Young from Wise, he is definitely capable with a lot of experience. Working with him has been smooth. The team is very responsive. They have been taking care of my documents, my filings. Yeah. For anyone out there, I would totally recommend my immigration attorney.